Nah, don't worry about it. Hey, I think I'm live. And here we go. Well, I'm here, Brook Drumm, live, alone in an empty room. It's October 25th, 2018. Hey, Thomas, what's up, man? Make sure I can hear everything. Testing. Ooh, that is very loud. Okay. All right. Another freebie. That's right. Good to see you. Good evening, sir. Lathe builder. You got to tell me about what kind of lathes you're building. All right. Now we're getting some people. How we doing, folks? So, yeah, I'm doing another Brook Drumm Live to the general public. And the idea is in the future, it'll be patreon.com/BrookDrumm. The supporters there that, pledge $10 and up. We'll get this every week, along with a bunch of other content. Recorded my 4th podcast today. I'll start dropping those publicly in iTunes beginning in November, and the whole world will get to hear those. But if you're on Patreon, you also have gotten, I think 2 have gone live at patreon.com/BrookDrumm. And we did, my roommate interviewed me, and then I interviewed Max Lebowski, who's the CEO of Formlabs. It's much shorter. I'm still kind of getting my trying to figure out exactly what kind of podcast this will be, but there will be an advertisement or more, one or more per episode. And I recorded Carl Ubis, so that one's upcoming. And we may have him come in for another one. We just got to talking like 2 old men sitting around at a retirement home. But not that he's old. He's old, and he's okay with that. But did Carl Ubis's. We got some editing to do on that. And then I recorded one today from Jeremy Black, a friend of mine that's helping me with CNC stuff. We're going to start doing videos together. He's got decades of experience on CNC and wood stuff. Although he can do metal too. And so we're going to start building our CNC. We've decided it'll be after the podcast, we went out into the garage and decided we're going to make it out of aluminum extrusion, 4 foot by 4 foot. It's going to have, we want it to be nice because we have to use this machine. It's not just something that's in a price range that people, like at PrinterBot, I wanted it to be cheap basically. But we want the CNC that everybody will love if they build it. You can build it yourself. It'll be linear rails, and we're going to use, the plan right now is to use rack and pinion, so it's accurate. We're looking at some larger motors, but we'll start with NEMA 23. What else? Definitely end stops everywhere, very accurate, homing. We want to get a nice spindle. So anyway, that was Jeremy Black. He did his raw recording today, so that's, I guess, episode 4. I might mix some of these up. I've got Dale Doherty tomorrow. So Dale Doherty's tomorrow. Edward from Shapeoko, thank you. Edward even joined Patreon today, so if you're listening, Edward, thank you. But Edward started Shapeoko, and we met years ago, so we'll be reconnecting in a podcast recording right after this. So for you guys that are joining, this is going to be probably 45 minutes or so. I need to stop short enough to get the recording ready for Edward and the Shapeoko. I guess he's with Carbide 3D now, but the Shapeoko. It was cool. I went down to my son's engineering class, and I've been helping him get his computers, his 3D printers working. They were all basically working, but, kids were fooling around with them, and the calibration was off and so on. And I went into his back room where he keeps a bunch of parts for robotics clubs and stuff to grab parts off of. And he had 2 Shapeokos sitting there. And I was like, oh, why aren't you using these? And he goes, yeah, those are on loan from another school. And I was going to some conference or something, and he needed them to be portable. So he grabbed those, used those at the show, and they've been sitting there ever since. But I'd love to get those running for him. So anyway, so let's see. If you got questions, primarily, this week, I won't always be in my living room, kitchen. We're going to move out to the shop. But since I had all this recording gear set up today, I got a new mic. You can probably hear me a lot better. Pretty sure. Hello. I'll get set up in my garage, so I can show you the stuff that I'm working on out there. But yeah, starting all of this content has been a little slower than I expected because you're a one-man show, so your cameraman, lighting, you got to do the projects. But we'll get more content out there, especially in this this coming month, November. So anyway, if you got questions, I'm sitting down and doing a talkie podcast today. So what do you got? What do you want to know? What do you want to hear? What questions do you have? I did see a lathe builder there. Did he? Okay. Oh, lathe builder. Something you said at IRF 2018 really resonated. I did a talk at. What is IRF? No, I was thinking, yeah, that was the one that I did a talk at, that I was saying to people, do something meaningful and get together with people. And it was kind of a grumpy old man talk where I was saying, you guys are so talented. Find people locally that enjoy the same things you do if you're a maker, or maybe you're just a CNC guy making furniture. Maybe you're a 3D printer enthusiast. But you guys have got to we're probably spread out all over the world here. Why don't we, do you see what I see? My wife's asking me a question.
They're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, it's high gain. Okay, I can fix that.
I'm just making sure you can see those things.
What's wrong? They can hear everything you're saying.
Oh,
tell me, let's do an audio check, everyone. Is it too loud? Is that better? Somebody tell me how I sound. Is it too much? I can turn the gain down. Is it better? Yeah, when Carl was doing his recording, he had the mic way far away from him. So maybe if I just move this a little bit. Is that better? Much better. Good now. Okay, it was a little too hot. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm going to start over. It's Brook Drumm live with a few minutes of bad audio. Hopefully it's better. Okay. I can adjust that too. It was a little hot, wasn't it? Testing. Yeah, that is. Let's see how that sounds. Okay. This mic is so good you can hear my lip smacks. Or, it's funny when you record yourself and you listen back to the audio, you realize just how awful you sound. Ooh, look, I'm going to do a camera adjustment. Yes. All right. Okay, so I was going to ask Lathe Builder, do you actually build lathes? I have a question for you. Okay, got past the audit. It's kind of awkward when you do these live streams because I have to. Margie's here, but she's probably going to leave a little bit. Somebody
asked if you remember doing a Skype call with a fan a year or two ago. Right?
Do I remember doing a Skype call with a fan a year or two ago? Oh, I've done a lot of Skype calls. I'm sorry. What did we talk about? Maybe. I don't want to lie to you and say, oh, I totally remember it. Maybe I don't. That is one thing about having a lot of people that want to talk to you. I meet people in person, and I remember I used to be a youth pastor, and there was a lot of kids that went through my program, and I had this one kid, you know, they grow up. I was a junior high guy, and they 3-4 years, they'd look totally different. They'd be about, you know, 8 inches taller. Came up to me, started talking to me. I was like, "Hey, dude, how you doing, man?" And he goes, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I was like, I recognize your face. You don't know my name, do you?" I was like, "No, I don't. I don't remember your name." And he was like, "Ugh." And he literally walked off. And I was just like, "Duh!" I remember faces, but not names real well. So Nick, sorry if I have forgotten details.
Lathe builder said he does.
So what kind of lathes do you build, man? We're going to interview lathe builder. Do you do like a automated control stuff? I mean, are they like steppers or is it manual? We'll start with that.
Somebody said thanks for the models on the site, so you could let them know they're slowly coming.
Yeah, Margie. Margie's my wife. She's over there. Hello.
Oh, don't show me.
She's watching the stream, but she said, wait, what did you say? Oh, the models. So she's helping me, you know, Margie's, can you imagine being married to me? She's a patient woman. So she's helping me put the models. I showed her how to just go into Fusion 360. I have hundreds and hundreds of projects and models and stuff. I'm looking at it behind the screen here. And she's trying to kind of root out the ones that the public might like to have and posting those. So she's been posting those on brookdrum.com. And I do intend to put all the major models online, but if you've got one that you want me to jump and, you know, cut in line, I've got what's the first? Adopt-a-Bot. By the way, there's a gentleman that has been like, Adopt-a-Bot, come on, Brooke, don't abandon me. It's Pimios Learn, Pimios Learn, at Pimios Learn. Anyway, but he's been tweeting that he's got this cool version of what? She's laughing. He's got this cool version of the Adopt-a-Bot that's like color coded anyway, it's pretty neat. That's a mostly 3D printer that I did a year ago. And, you know, as I often do, I put it up there and then I kind of crickets, and then I come back to it and do a little bit more and then crickets. Well, he was like, "Dude, I've done some improvements. You ought to check out his model because he's done some improvements that I need to probably incorporate into the official model." But he asked for that. So I put that up first. And then we put up the printer belt because another guy, I've been working with this hackerspace in Marysville. What is that? Wide Awake Geek? Yeah, Wide Awake Geek. I don't know if it's a website, but Marysville is up the road from Lincoln, Sacramento, up on 99. And he used to work with the hackerspace in Rockland, California, which was apparently the first community college. I guess that's a state college that literally funded and opened a hackerspace. They partnered with each other. And so it was the first community college to open a hackerspace. So all the students got access, the free, can you imagine just being in college? And this hackerspace was nice, getting free access to all the, it is 24/7. So you can go at 3 a.m. if you need something laser cut. It's hilarious. But anyway, so he worked with them for a while, and then he went off and did his own thing in Marysville. And he's wanting to produce the Play V2, another model that I need to post. But he came over to my garage, and, you know, I got all this crap in my garage, and you can imagine, you know, skim the top off of PrinterBot of the useful stuff you need, the tools you need to design and build. And it's in my garage. So he came by and was like, can I get a printer belt? And I'm like, I think I have one in a box. He needed the printer belt because I realized the box I gave him didn't have any 3D printer parts, and he didn't know how to assemble it. So I posted that one. So there's Adopt-a-Bot, printer belt, and now the smalls. We're kind of working back in time to post those files and give them away to the world. Let's see. Let me read a few more here. But if you have a model that you'd like to get, for me to get on printer bot. There I go. brookdrum.com. I can do that. Yeah, you don't want to be married to me. Margie can comment. So you've got a 3D printed lathe that has been.
No, he would like one,
Oh, you'd like one.
or that's what they thought about.
The trouble is plastic, high strength. I've got some, my idea, not idea, but it's not that unique. There are other people doing this as well. We all printed our Yoda heads once we got our 3D printer, and that got old pretty quick. A lot of vase prints. When you're going to shows and you're a 3D printer manufacturer, vase prints are pretty popular because they just work and they take a long time and they're pretty. So I did a lot of that, but we were into manufacturing. So I kind of drifted away from the stuff that I really wanted to do, make 3D printed parts and really push the envelope of what that little machine or whatever machine you have can do. That's materials, and materials have come such a long way. So I heard about some materials this week that were pretty interesting. I did if you follow my Twitter account, I think it's at Printerbot. There's a guy on there that was like the king of the Printerbot Plus, the metal version of the Plus. Interesting story. I'm going to tell it. I hope it's okay. What's his name?
I don't know which guy.
The guy that I Skyped with the other day?
Oh.
The Stormtrooper guy?
Spanner Hands?
Yeah, Spanner Hands is his
that's his,
Twitter name. But Spanner Hands, I went to he was in his shop when I Skyped with him last week. He's a Patreon. He went in at $50, and so you get a Skype with me, and I say 20 minutes, and it's the first one, so we talked for quite a while. But I said, so what do you do? What's the story with you? And he said, well, I make Stormtrooper armor. And I was like, what? That's awesome. And he's like, yeah, here's the link. I think it's originalstormtrooper.com, something like that. And it's in the UK. It's in London. And he's like, yeah, the guy that did the Stormtrooper armor for Star Wars. I'm like, okay. Yeah, him and Lucas never made an agreement, so he kept making the armor from the original molds. And I'm like, you're kidding me. Still making it to this day. Can you believe that? So he does, it's all vacuum formed, and they're beautiful. But he's like, yeah, so I got into 3D printing, and his thing was, that kind of fascinated me. I was like, well, you just tweaked this Printerbot Plus out to high heaven. He's like, yeah, like not everything you did was good. And I was like, fair. That's fair. And so what do you change? And I looked at his model and stuff, but he says, yeah, I'm kind of a lazy guy. I'm like, bro, you are not lazy. But he says, well, I am in this respect. I don't print anything if I can't take it off the bed, easily snap off the support, and it's done. No post-processing needed. And I was like, wow, really? So they're long prints. He goes, yeah, I printed about 50, 55. He goes, all those guys out there that say they print faster, that's rubbish. Because he gets it really high resolution. So he should, I've seen some pictures of his prints and they're gorgeous. He said, yeah, so I did. He told me the things that he changed, but he says, I've got it down where I can print unbelievably high resolution with that printer and just thousands of hours of printing. So I was like, well, that's awesome. So we talked about materials, and he goes, well, he has a printing service, so he uses those printers. He has other ones, I think. But he says, yeah, I use nylon with glass bead. And I'm like, what? I haven't even heard of that. And he goes, well, that's pretty obscure. In fact, he used to sell filament, but China kind of took all of that. And he says, but I kept a big stash for myself. And if you want to make mechanical prints that, like gears, like meshed gears that are really, really strong, he says, just the surface on this stuff is so resilient. When I made the original printer bot from the Kickstarter, it was plastic gears. And I think I continued the plastic gears for a time, and then we got injection molded. But they were herringbone gears, and if you ran it forever, long time, and we had this bot farm with like 30 some printers, we always had to get over 30 in the farm if we wanted 30 to work. And I mean, rarely did 30 work, but we had these plastic gears, herringbone gears. somebody on Thingiverse designed them, and they were quiet. They had very little backlash at all. But over time, you'd get this powder. It was ABS, and the plastic would grind against it, and it would have this powder. And he goes, "Yeah, with this nylon and glass bead, it's extremely tough on the surface, and you can run them forever, and no problem." But it's very obscure. I don't even know where to buy this stuff. But so that's a new material. The nylon, and there's nylon and carbon fiber. There's nylon and fiberglass. Little strands of chopped fiberglass in there. But I think there's there's stuff that's way better than PLA. PLA is very brittle, and when you're doing mechanical parts, it's not that you would drop it and it would break, but you could never do a bike gear or something like that. I mean, not that you could do that with nylon, but you could do a lot more with nylon, and you can go all the way up to Ultim and Peak. And I know that the cost of that filament used to be, well, it still is very expensive. It used to be you couldn't find it, but now there's a couple of manufacturers that make that. And you get this little bitty roll, and it's like 100 grams, and it's probably $100 or something. It's ridiculously expensive. But if you're doing a prototype that not only needs to have the form to show the client, but it needs to perform like an actual usable part that's one-off, and it needs to last a little while, Peak or Ultim are very, very, they're at the top of the pyramid of plastic, where they're extremely resilient. Now, you need a high temp hot end to do that. By the way, Carl, he does sell those 24-volt high temp hot ends. And he told us in the podcast about, I was asking him about the temperature sensor, and it's he can make, and I said make, PT100 or PT1000 temperature sensors, and they're platinum. They have platinum in them. He built a machine that welds these two dissimilar metals together. And when I think it's the inverse. I forget which one is which, but a thermistor, I think it lowers in resistance when the temperature gets higher. I could have this backwards, but the PT 100 and 1000, it goes the opposite direction that a thermistor goes. So when the E3D guys came out with a PT 100, they got this little amplifier circuit because the variance in the resistance was, or the readings that the Arduino would have to read to register the right temperature. You have to boost it, and then just the electronics itself adds like complexity and minimizes sensitivity. So Carl said, "Well, what you can just make, we can make a custom PT1000 that requires no extra electronics." So these 24-volt high temp hot ends, they go to 500C. He wants me to say 450C, but it's high enough to do Peak and Ultim, which is all you'd ever need. And those are they just plug right into the printer board. Or theoretically, you could do it with any electronics. You have to change the firmware, though, because, again, it's the opposite direction. And those are accurate plus or minus 1 degree all the way up to 500C. So I don't know if you know this, but the thermistor you're using is wildly inaccurate. And in fact, if you buy 2 printers from anybody, and most people use Chinese-made thermistors, and the variance in tolerance with those are surprisingly wide. And so I'm not trying to dog E3D, but Carl said, I can do a better job. Instead of requiring electronics, I can just make it a plug-in. And in fact, he had the specs, he's an electronic engineer, and he had the specs to just make them custom to operate within the band of, I believe it's resistance or voltage. Gosh, now see, this is why I have to have Carl. But anyway, so he had to have a custom one made, and he had some manufacturers with factories that would try to make them. And there was this one guy that he finally settled on, and he gave him the specs, and he couldn't make the part right. I mean, he did, some of them worked, but he goes, 8 out of 10 would work, and there was like 2 failures. So I went and I showed him how to do it, and I documented the process, because I made him at my house. And the guy, God bless him, just couldn't do it. So Carl ended up just making the jigs and the hardware and the manufacturing equipment to make his own PT1000s. He can make PT100 too. and he welds them right there. It's like arc welding under a microscope. It's pretty crazy. The wires on these things they're smaller than a human hair. So anyway, that hot end has enabled me to experiment with new materials. And I know that some manufacturers will say it goes to 300C. Well, yeah, if you have a nichrome wire heater, which, the cartridge heaters, which are prone to failure, from China. I think China makes all of them. Even the E3D ones are made in China. The heater cores that the printer bots went out with, the UBIS 13S and 13HF high flow, and the high temp. Those are all made from high quality nichrome wire sourced. I don't know where he gets it. I think it's in the US, but who knows? Anyway, it's nichrome wire. It's hand wrapped around the heater core. First, he was doing in the ceramic. He would lay the nichrome wire in the grooves of the threads because he wanted it as close to the plastic as possible. Nobody was doing that. But he eventually went to like an aluminum spool, and he winds it around there. It's very precise. He tests every one and physically tests. He's a failure analysis guy. That's what he did for a living with a large company. And so he'd test everyone, and everyone is very, very good. So they're good hot ends. So that kind of opened up me to experiment with materials. And I say, and I don't really care what printer you have, let's find those materials that are a cut above PLA. Now, again, most manufacturers say 300C. The truth is, it's not going to be accurate if it's a regular thermistor at 300C. At 275, it can be pretty accurate. I think it's plus or minus 1%. But, I don't know what that measures to, 3 degrees or something like that. But when you go above that, it starts, like if the line is here, it starts to drift off the line. So if you go above 275C with any printer in the world that just has a regular thermistor, it's not going to be accurate. And up above 300C, it really starts to get crazy, and you won't even be close. Some of these new materials are up there. And anyway, so I have the hot ends here. I have the printers here, heated chambers, even with the PrinterBot Plus Pro, I think I called it. I sold like very few of those. I've got the printers that can make this stuff. So I say we start making 3D printed stuff that can do real work. So anyway, that's a long diatribe of what I'm interested in lately. I'm going to go back and read through some of these, so bear with me. I'm still fascinated with this lathe builder who wants a 3D printed lathe. I know that if we had better materials, that would help. But you're just not going to get away from the fact that a hunk of aluminum is just way better than anything 3D printed. So I wonder if a design could be done that uses, like, here's one. What about, well, yeah, I see this one that says, what about a vertical lathe 3D printer? Vertical lathe 3D. Oh, I thought he was, so I've got a drill press, and I've seen people modify the drill press, an off-the-shelf drill press, to do, automated movements with stepper motors and stuff. And even the manual mills, you can pick up some really nice manual mills that might be huge, but even the World War II era stuff that you saw in shop class in the 80s, like I did, those are cheap, and you will never, they literally don't make the quality in anymore like that. It was just, and they were doing this with hand tools and slide rules, man. But anyway, those there may be a conversion that might be worth looking at for a lathe, a conversion with a drill press or something like that. But plastic is really good for prototyping, but yeah, making those parts in metal is not that hard. So I would think that a design that's 3D printed would have to be very small. I don't know what you're making. Lathe builder, why do you want a lathe? It'd be very inexpensive to do that. I know that some people use drills and kind of modify them. Some people use drill presses or a motor from something like that, an off-the-shelf tool. But also there's the, the hobby quadcopter motors that are geared down with a belt and, some gears or something. Could be very good to hit that sweet spot of the speed that you would need. Different materials need different speed. Anyway, I've always wanted to make a lathe myself. There is a very good, what is it? It's a lathe. It's an automated lathe. I found it. I don't want to go look for it right now, but it was a homemade thing. And there was how many axis did he have? He had this tool changer that was a rotary tool changer that slid out on this platform, just linear rails like you get from China. And he would come up, choose his tool, and then it would move in to the lathe and do all this automated process. So he was manufacturing stuff. He built that lathe for way cheaper than anything like that would cost if you bought it off the shelf. I've publicly said that we're building on my Patreon channel. We're about to start with a 3D printer, new design. So if you're a Patreon subscriber, you'll get all this. 3D printer, CNC. I actually want to do a laser cutter and a water jet. But and I want all of that to cost less than $5,000. I know it's a lot of money for some. It's a lot of money for me. But you got to spend a little bit of money, make sure this stuff is rigid enough to like do real work. We're not going to do like X-Carve. No offense to X-Carve, but it's floppy. You can't do aluminum. You can get these big, platforms, and I don't know what it's good for. But we're going to do 4x4 that can do aluminum. But still, that's not really the right way to do it if you want to save time. So laser cutters are cool for wood, but in plastic, just really, really fast. Water jet's the final thing. But after we get those done, I would love to do a lathe. CNC lathe would be fantastic because there's a lot of parts for a 3D print. A lot. It's overstatement. There's a few parts on a 3D printer that you absolutely need a lathe. It would be great. All right, what else we got? Margie, anything stick out?
Questions about the printer belt. They were talking about which firmware. A couple people, they just wondered if you were going to tinker with it.
Yes.
Moving forward, because they're having a little bit of issues.
Yeah, in fact.
About the firmware for it.
Okay. So the firmware for the printer belt is the exact same. I always started with almost every bot. I started with the simple metal. I learned early on that if you start switching, the direction of motors and, like you mount them in a different place or you flip it or something, you don't, as a manufacturer, all your machines, it would be great if they worked with the same firmware. Well, we weren't quite there because you had to have different build volumes. So those were M codes that you would put in and change the build volume.
By the way, is on there.
William Steele is here, baby. Where are you at? He's up at the top. So anyway, yeah, the printer belt was inspired. I just wrote that today. Was inspired by William Steele's work. And, later you saw the black belt. But the firmware that I use is actually the PrinterBot simple metal firmware, which actually is the same as the Smalls, which is the same as, it goes on because I just decided I'm going to put the end stops in the same place like Max are in, and I'm going to put the direction of the motor the same. So most of my ladder printer designs use the same firmware, and it just means you have to go in. It's going to be the wrong build volume. If you have an older, or you were using something else, some other drive gear for the E, you might have to change the steps per millimeter to really calibrate that extruder properly. But, I went through several extruders too. The Wade's extruder was first, and that's geared, so it's wildly different than the ladder stuff. Then I had a manufacturer that was in Sacramento or Citrus Heights doing, he was using a hand, he had some hand processes that he was using to make the drive gear. And he would like angle, like, what's it called? A tap that would cut the teeth in there. It was turning while he like would squeeze. It wasn't exact. Later, we jumped to another manufacturer and he made those drive gears exactly the same. Everyone was the same, diameter across the teeth. So before that, we'd have to switch around and kind of calibrate. Once we started going with that manufacturer up in Auburn, you could pretty much reliably say, the steps per millimeter, and they would all be the same with those drive gears. But then we switched to the, Brian loved this design, the gear head, and that was a dual, and it's similar to the dual drive mechanism, 2 pinion gears that are matched together. So you get the rotation like this, and it's pulling the filament down from 2 sides. And the gearhead extruder, it was the same every time because we bought off the shelf pin gear, and then we cut a groove in there to kind of, receive the filament and center it on the hole. Some people say that the pinion gear was not superior or equal to the, what's that guy that does the Bondtech? Very nice guy, good quality stuff. But I just didn't go that route. And that's a different steps per millimeter. So besides that, the firmware you can use on the printer belt is the same. However, to drive it, I just recommend either the Polar Cloud, and Bill, I'm sure you can comment on how people would do this, but Bill William Steele, he was with Polar 3D, and now he's on to some fun stuff. But he allowed me to come onto Polar Cloud. Now, the beauty of the Polar Cloud with the printer belt is the fact that you can queue up multiple parts in a row. Like you can have 10 parts, or you can have 10 copies of the same part, and it'll just keep going and going and going. So that was the dream, to have queued up manufacturing of a bunch of different parts, and the cloud runs it. You have to have a Raspberry Pi. And, he was like, yeah. We can do this. And then, the plane I was piloting hit the ground. So we didn't get any further on that, but I bet it's still around. I've been watching your comments, Bill. We could get some documentation up on that, but I will, in fairness, say that there's also the black belt version of Cura. However, maybe you guys could tell me this. It looks like he's built the Cura derivative that works with black belt. That would work with the printer belt. I moved the end stops around to match his, so we could kind of like self-standardize, but I can't connect to the printer bot, the printer board, with that software. So I don't know if he just was catering to his own needs, which is fine, or maybe intentionally took it out, or there was some complexity. I don't know, but I would have to save the print and put it in an SD card in the printer board to be able to print. So I don't know what the deal is with that, but Polar 3D, you can do it. What else we got? And oh, by the way, with the printer belt, the new printer I'm doing will be printer belt compliant. So I'm going to noodle around with a crazy idea, which I may, in a week or two call a stupid idea. But, not too long ago, Bill and I were talking about how that first layer, you've angled your XY essentially, and the Z is going that way. So you've angled your XY like that. So that means that the hot end still is 90 degrees out from the XY. So when you're trying to shoot plastic out on an angle, it tends to like roll a little bit. And Bill had this neat thing where he would draw a line, so kind of like make a wall, a barrier. So when you're printing into it, it has a stop. That was good, and that helped things a lot. But I was wondering if, we were noodling on the phone one day, and I said, what if we rotated that on the first layer to put down that first layer like really level, and then tilt it back and finish. So that idea of a tilting bed, and then I thought, well, there's some stuff on, I saw it on YouTube where a guy made a printer belt just out of looked like Kapton tape or something, kind of the MakerBot automated build platform style. But instead of Bill informed me the way the patent reads is, no one but MakerBot can do XYZ plus conveyor belt. And Bill was like, what if we replace one of the axis with a belt? Brilliant. So there's some people on YouTube that have done Cartesian bots with what is it, Z, and it's like a Prusa X, or X and Z, and then the belt is Y, so it will actually move the model. So it's basically take the Prusa bed off, put these round cylinders, and I used aluminum tube, and just move the Y as it prints. The nice thing about that, you don't violate a patent, and you can do multiple parts at a time. So he has a video, the guy that I saw. Now, I like that, but it limits your Z to whatever you got in the Z. When you go at this angle and the Z is going this way, it's unlimited. So I still think there's a benefit to doing a traditional printer belt, but not all cases, you don't need it. If you don't need unlimited Z if you're not printing something really long. So I thought I'm going to noodle around with the idea of a printer that is both Cartesian and can be easily locked down to the printer belt. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'll be noodling with all of that. As I posted that file today, I realized I have 2 versions. The original printer belt, Bill has the first one of those. I have the second. That's all that were made. And then I revved it and did a different version. I'm not remembering why. I'm sure there was good reasons. Oh yeah. I changed, instead of the what is it, the X axis, the whole axis traveling up, I switched. I did originally have it as the Y axis was kind of this ramp, and then you didn't have to move much weight. The problem with that was, I'll rotate. If you were wanting to put 2 printers in sequence like this, because I was messing around with, we built an Escher printer, the Autodesk project that had like 6 or 7, it was a bunch of printers all in a row, all building on the same platform simultaneously. Very complicated. We did it. I have one of the prints that we did out in the garage. It's like this huge, long Printerbot logo that we just went, stretched it to like 3 feet long. And that took, a couple hours to print, and it was huge. So that has value, but it was so complicated. They ended up ditching the project. And I thought, well, Printerbot would be cool if you could do 2 or more extruders, basically 2 or more printers. But that bar was in the way on that first version. You would never be able to pass through it. So if you did the X as the whole thing that moves up and down, then that got it out of the way. That's the version 2 printer belt. And then I did a 12 by 12 version of the printer belt. On McMaster-Carr, you can buy this stainless steel belt shim material at 12 inches wide. So the one that I'm going to make is 12 inches wide. So I'm not going to mess around with the smaller version. I'm just going to jump right to it. So it's going to be a pretty large printer, and we'll be able to be Cartesian and printer belt style. All right. Jim Haney says, I can never get a USB connection. Only got over SD to work. I think that speaks to the Black Belt Cura version. I don't think it's you or the electronics. It's just that it was custom designed to work with whatever electronics the Black Belt uses. So yeah, exporting that G code is the way to go. I hope I'm interpreting that right. Hello to Norway. Let's see what else we got, guys. Any other questions?
The light builder mentioned the Deltesian project.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Is the Deltesian? I'll check that out. Deltesian project. You know what? I'm going to see what happens when I go to my browser and just search for that. I assume it's multiple Deltots.
Bill said something about P50, the printer belt idea, but I don't think we can do anything with it. Somebody asked about a P50. I don't know.
P50? Well, I see Deltesian on GitHub.
No. It was something Bill said, the P50.
Oh, here we go. Hybrid 3D printer, proof of concept. It's on Reddit. Is there a picture? There it is. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, no, that's interesting. Ooh, look at that. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So the Deltesian is kind of cool. It's sort of it very much is a hybrid. How do I copy this link? I found it on Reddit. Here's the link. Can I do the link? Yeah, I can do a link. Anyway, that's what he was talking about. Pretty cool. I'm not exactly sure what the benefit of that is. I guess speed, maybe. But what is this P50?
I don't know. He said it was a printer idea.
What was the P50, Bill or William?
He said it's actually a flash forge made machine now.
Oh, yeah.
Being built or sold by Copy.
Yeah. So yeah, at the end there, Bill was so helpful in that we were starting to look at, well, if you can't beat them, join them. So maybe some of these Chinese printers, if we can find one that's got high quality, and Bill knows the ones that are, we could do a printer bot badged and QC'd 3D printer. But I had to call him and just say, Bill, thought I was going to make it, but I just died. So yeah, there's a show ERF, I think, that I had. Not only on Bill's table, there was one that he had a Printerbot logo on that was maybe that was the P50. It was very large. You know, those. I'm trying to remember. I can see it in my head, but I can't remember what the name brand that everybody knows of it. Anyway. Yeah. So now, you know, what's great about not having a job is there's no competition. So I don't have to worry about the economics of what I put my head towards now. I can just do what I'm interested in, even if that's wild, you know, exploration.
One last question.
Yeah. What's another question?
But what's your take on BNC's recent statements about open source hardware? I don't know who that is. BNC?
Oh, you know what? I think it's talking about the Arduino founder. Did you got a link to an article? What did he say?
That was just somebody's question.
Massimo Bonzi or Bonsai. I always said Bonsai, but it's Bonzi. Here it is. Wait. Is this a recent article? Is it the Ars Technica? No, maybe that's old. Well, I will definitely check that out if he's got a recent. Give me a link.
They can't give you links, remember?
Oh, I'm sorry, you can't do links. You know, you can spell them out. You know, like DOT for dot. I don't know what Massimo has said recently.
He did TED Talk in July. It looks like is that what
July TED Talk.
July of 2018. That's pretty recent.
Oh, Lathe Builder. I did see that Deltesian that was on a tilt. Not a bad idea. Seems like it's a little more trouble than it's worth, though. I think it was really clever, though. I don't buy that the Delta is faster. I know. I mean, I know it moves faster, but I want to see a print of the same resolution as a Cartesian that's faster. I just don't buy it. The thing that ends up slowing people down is the extruder, that end, how fast the filament can go. And I don't care how fast you go, you're going to suffer. I mean, as you go faster, you're going to suffer resolution. So I don't know. I just never got into deltas. I've never built one ever. eetimes.com.
Yeah, that's where I just found it. That's funny.
What's he say? I'm gonna have to be going pretty soon, guys, so I can get that eetimes.com.
Kind of sounds like you. I don't understand this.
Was he ixnay on the open source A.
Well, he said hardware should be released under non-commercial license.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I agree with that.
Wants to make a product, they should talk to us and license for professional use, blah, blah, blah.
Well, you know, Massimo, I mean, we've spent some time together. He's a friend. He is and let me tell you, he's a wonderful man. Wonderful man. Spend any time with that guy, he's a real deal. He's not only an educator, which I love, but he's an Italian and he's fantastic. So his heart is all, I mean, as far as I know, it's always been in the right place. He got in a weird deal with his partner that I say stole the Arduino.com or whatever it was. It was a legal battle. I think they kissed and made up later, but he went through the ringer, but he always had a warm heart. And there was a debate in the open source community about, you know, in fact, very early on, for a short period of time, I came out and I said, Creative Commons, non-commercial. I'll tell you my take on that. I haven't read the article yet, but I think that's a waste of time. I don't think open source means non-commercial. It's kind of like saying, you know, you're for something, but you don't want to really test that to the degree at which it would make a difference. You know, I'm for giving stuff away as long as nobody makes any money off of it. It's ridiculous. So I just said, you know what, screw it. There was a guy that ripped off. I say ripped off. I did a non-commercial license on the V1 alu extruder that I use, aluminum extruder. And some guy took the files that I did and he put it in a Kickstarter. And I was like, what's going on? And he was like, I'm sorry, I should have asked, whatever. He was nice about it. But I finally realized, just if you're going to call yourself open source, let people make it and sell it. So, you know, today I got, again, 5-minute warning here. I got to go in about 4 minutes. Got a LinkedIn message from a guy in Egypt today. And he says, Brook, you know, we can manufacture cheaply in Egypt. And, you know, I don't know what I asked him. I don't know what you're expecting from me, but let me be clear. You know, it's open source. You can do whatever you want with it. You can sell them. I don't care. If you want my help and you'd like to use some of the sourcing knowledge that I've gained, or you'd like a revision of one of my printers that's different, or you want me to design something, you know, I love the British word bespoke, you know, custom, one-off, just for you. I would do that, you know, because I don't have to build them. I don't want to build them right now. I'm doing content. It's going to be a while before all this legal stuff is over. I mean, it could be even 2 years. But if he wants to do hardware and give me a thank you check, or, you know, give me a $5 a printer or something, then that's fine. I don't know if I'm even going to get the PrinterBot name or website. I don't know if it's going to be able to be mine later or not. But you know, we had some pretty good ideas at PrinterBot, and we made great printers. So if somebody wants to continue the effort, then I'd be open. But here's 2 things I don't have. I don't have a manufacturing place anymore. So manufacturing, me participating in the manufacturing is not really going to happen. We'd have to, like Bill did, he did it wisely. He found a place that was really good at manufacturing and he used them for his Polar 3D stuff. That's a good idea. I'd do that. But I also don't have the money that I used to have. So, you know, I'm back to being a regular old maker in a garage. So I told this guy, see you, baby, love you. I told this guy, you know, if you want to do something like that, where I help you and I do documentation and all that, but I have no problem with people selling my designs. And I don't know if Massimo's the opposite of that or the same as that, but that's my take on it. All right, gotta close it down here. Let me read through. Let's see. He Bonsai wants a non-commercial open source license. Oh, so he's actually going the opposite direction. Well, as a guy that has the whole world ripping off his stuff, I can see where he's coming from. Electronic design is a little bit different. You know, my heart goes out to guys that think, oh, if I had $1 for every Arduino that was sold, I'd be set. Well, yeah. But that didn't happen. I don't know. I'm a little bit, I say don't call it open source unless it's non-commercial, but that's me. Haven't talked about the board upgrade kit. I don't even know exactly what that was. Oh, no, I haven't. No Delta. Monster Mark, any idea when we are going to start designing stuff? Yes. I've reached the... Okay, got it. We've reached the... We're almost to November. In November is when we start. So in a week. I'd be overstating if I said I've got a bunch of designs ready. I'm taking you guys through the whole process from day one. You will see, the Patreon folks will see screencasts of my design, my thought process, my early, and I can post on, I will post on Patreon some of the early designs, like the really nutty stuff that you'll see how I design. I design a little bit, and then I build, and then I test it, and then I design some more and change it and all that. So, all right. That's it, people. It'll be starting soon. Thank you for joining me. Patreon.com/Brook Drumm. Keep in mind that these will not be public every week unless you're $10 or above on Patreon. Just trying to honor those guys for the investment they're making. But we will drop a free one every month on YouTube that you can watch after the fact. So that's how we're doing that. Kind of the same thing with the podcasts. You'll see those later. If you want to get early, then go to patreon.com/Brook Drumm. So guys, thank you so much. It was great being with you guys today. Well, next week it will be private. So it'll be the same thing, but you'll have to go be a Patreon subscriber to get that alert and the address. So it'll be a private thing. Okay. Have a great week. Happy printing, happy lathing, happy CNCing. Great to see you guys. Take care and have a good week.